later. Okay. So, all right, welcome. My name is Martha Saavedra. I am from the Center for African Studies at Berkeley, UC Berkeley, and I work with the African Studies Association Outreach Council, among other things. I also help to run the MasterCard Foundation Scholars Program at Berkeley. And Cecil Chikezie, our guest today, is in that program. Cecil is currently a master's student in bioengineering at UC Berkeley. He did his undergraduate degree at University of Nairobi. And all the while he was doing that, he's an entrepreneur and created Eco Makaa, which I think he's going to talk to us about today. But won along the way the Anzishi Prize, which is for young Africans, a way of a prize run out of the African Leadership Academy to encourage entrepreneurship among young people and help them to learn how to make pitches and how to run businesses, and then also provide some funding, I think, to advance their projects. So Cecil received that award, and since then I think is what we would call a serial entrepreneur. So somebody who is constantly coming up with new ideas, and I've seen him in action with gathering other people together and getting them to all collaborate on a team. And so today he's going to talk to us a bit about entrepreneurship on the continent, and particularly for young people and what that means. So Cecil, go ahead.
Thank you, Martha, for the opportunity. I'm indeed honored to be participating in this event today. And as you may well know, we'll be exploring one of the important topics to me, which is basically entrepreneurship. So I believe that we can start off. And once again, thank you, Martha, for inviting me together with the team. I will share my screen. I hope that everybody is able to see it from your side. From the screen, you can see that the topic is the ethos of entrepreneurship. And as was earlier said, my name is Cecil Chikezie. I am the founder of a company called Eco Makaa, which basically produces clean, sustainable alternatives to wood charcoal in the form of briquettes made out of carbonized agricultural waste. Additionally, I'm a student at the University of California, Berkeley, pursuing a master's in engineering with a focus on bioengineering. This is, as Martha said, under the MasterCard Foundation Scholarship, which is a scholarship that empowers Africans with the various skills that are required to improve and better the living conditions in Africa. So I'm very excited to be exploring this topic, and I'm very happy that each and every one of you has been able to join. So to start us off, what better way to start than to teach you a greeting from Kenya? So I know a lot of you know one common greeting, which is jambo, if I'm not wrong. Yes, jambo is a Swahili word, but I'd like to teach you another one. So when I say habari, you say mzuri. So you can basically unmute yourself. This is a time whereby I want to hear your voices. You can take the show. So when I say habari, please just unmute yourself and say mzuri. So I'll start. Habari?
Mzuri.
Once again, habari?
Mzuri.
Great stuff, great stuff. So that's one key takeaway if you do not take any other thing away from the presentation. So to start off, I'd like to basically pinpoint where Kenya is. So Kenya is in Africa. It's in the eastern part of Africa, and it is bordered with Somalia to the east. Then we have Ethiopia to the north. We have Sudan, Uganda to the west. Then to the bottom is Tanzania. So it's a country that is rich in various resources, and we are bordering the Indian Ocean. So we have various sceneries. And to take it from there, I know some of you might have some knowledge of what comes from Kenya. And I'm proud to just reiterate it. So the first thing is, many people know Kenya for the Maasai. The Maasai is a community that lives in the northeastern part of Kenya. And they are very, should I say, native to the country. And as you can see them on the top left picture, they are adorned in their kikuis, and you would see them herding their cattle. And then the second thing that you would know from Kenya is that we have very good runners. So that's on the bottom left picture. And I would have actually quizzed this by asking who the runner is, but I think I gave it away with the names on the picture. So you can see Eliud Kipchoge on the right, running alongside Mo Farah, who is a British runner. And Eliud Kipchoge is a great runner. He's able to run for long distances. And some fun fact is that he comes from the Rift Valley region of Kenya. And so for those who've been to Kenya before, the Rift Valley is along the escarpment, and it's at a very high altitude. And so runners normally go up on the Rift Valley in order to train, and it builds their stamina. It enables them to run at whatever conditions that they're normally required to run at, and they are able to actually become the best runners. And they're normally from a community called the Kalenjin. So Kipchoge is a Kalenjin, and we are proud to have him as a Kenyan. The third thing is Kenyan tea. So Kenyan tea is a favorite. When I was coming to United States of America for my master's, I made sure to carry some tea. It just reminded me of home. And then the final thing that you should know from Kenya, and which should bring you to Kenya, is the Great Wildebeest Migration. So what normally happens at various times of the year is that the wildebeest in the Masai Mara normally run across some large river in order to get to the Serengeti, which is in Tanzania. And so they cross this river that's infested with crocodiles, and it's such a great scenery. So I'd like to invite you all to come to Kenya and experience all these wonders. It's indeed the cradle of mankind. Myself, I'm from Nairobi, Kenya, and all my experiences that I'm going to be talking about sprout from the fact that I'm from Nairobi. And in Nairobi, you realize that I have two pictures up there. We have a picture of some high-rise, well-built buildings. Then we have some pictures of some slums. So Kenya and Nairobi, to be particular, is made up of these two sides of the coin. I come from a place that's just at the border of one of the affluent regions and one of the largest slums. So one of the largest slums is Kawangware, and one of the largest affluent regions is Lavington. And so this actually was very fundamental in terms of building my entrepreneurship, because I was able to experience both sides of the coin, and I was able to apply it in my life. Today, we're going to be exploring 4 things. 1, what is entrepreneurship? 2, what is its importance? 3, what are the principles? And 4, what should be its ethos? So on the slide, we can see that entrepreneurship is made up of various things. It's made up of research. It's made up of design, of thinking, of brainstorming, inspiration, visions, and ideas. All of this encompass entrepreneurship. But what is it exactly to be an entrepreneur? With the assistance of Google, I was able to get a definition, and it basically said the activity of setting up a business or businesses, taking on financial risks in the hope of profit. I'll just repeat it. Entrepreneurship is the activity of setting up a business or businesses, taking on financial risks in the hope of profit. Then I decided to add a little section there. This should be with the aim of solving a problem. whether in the community that you come from, or the region, or the continent, it should mainly sprout from solving a problem. I know different people have different meanings to entrepreneurship, but entrepreneurship is basically that. Now, we had talked about Eco Makaa, the company that I founded in Kenya, and I founded it in the year 2013 when I was at the University of Nairobi. So I'd like to know how many people in the call today know about the University of Nairobi. Is there anybody? Okay, I can see Alex Sabanos. Yes, it's actually the best university, not bragging, but it's the best university in Kenya. And that's where I was studying my undergrad. That's the Bachelor of Mechanical Engineering. And so while I was in my third year, I came across the news that Kenya had banned logging within the country. And this was mainly due to the large-scale use of charcoal. So actually 71% of urban households were using wood fuel as a source of energy. So the normal picture that you would have in your mind is people in the village picking up firewood, cutting up trees in order to cook. But even in the urban regions, people were using charcoal, people were using wood to cook. And this could be seen in the areas that I pointed out, like Kawangware, which is one of the slums. So because firewood is like the cheapest form of fuel, people would just buy it or go to one of the trees and cut down some of the logs and be able to use them to cook, whether they're fish or they're githeri, which is a local delicacy in Kenya. And because it was the cheapest, it was the most readily available, they would use it without actually regarding the fact that it could lead to large-scale deforestation. So the current forest cover in Kenya is at 7.4%, which is low even when compared to the 10% that's recommended for any country by the United Nations. Another aspect to this, apart from the global warming and environmental aspect, is the health aspect. So we find that 21,500 Kenyans die in a year as a result of using dirty wood fuel. So because of the respiratory diseases that come along with it, you'll find that in the long term, their respiratory conditions worsen. And it's even made worse with the COVID-19 pandemic, you can imagine. So this is where I came in. I came in with a solution to provide Eco Makaa briquettes, which are basically a sustainable and clean and affordable alternative to wood charcoal. So from the pictures, you can see that the first step is obtaining the maize cobs. So what one would do is we would go to the farmers within the Kiambu region and be able to amass all the maize cobs that were gotten. We'd also go to the markets with the women who normally sell the maize grain and get all the cobs. And once we've been able to get all of them, we'd go into the second step, which would be the carbonization of this maize cobs. So we'd put them in a carbonization kiln, which is normally made by the Juakali industry. So the Juakali industry are the artisans in Kenya who normally are able to work metal. And so they'd make the carbonization kilns, and we'd be able to burn the maize cobs within the carbonization kilns in the absence of oxygen. Once we burn them, we're able to have a product which can be seen on the picture 3. So that's just basically maize cobs that have turned into some form of carbon. And finally, we go into stage 4, whereby the maize cobs are ground into a fine powder. Thereafter, we now go into the fabrication of the briquettes. So we take the ground maize cobs that have been carbonized. We mix it with clay, and we mix it with water in the ratio of 10 to 40 to 10. Once this mixture has been mixed thoroughly, it's passed through a compacting machine. So once the entire mixture is compacted, we now take it to the third step, whereby the briquettes are left to sun dry. So our business, Eco Makaa, actually operates in the Kitengela region of Nairobi. And so Kitengela is a very hot place with little to no rainfall most times of the year. And so because of the repercussions that would come with using electricity to dry the briquettes, we decided to use natural sun drying. And that informed our decision to put one of our production sites in Kitengela. And so once the briquettes have been sun-dried for a period of 3 days, they can be used as this clean, sustainable, and affordable alternative to wood charcoal. So the competitive advantage. You can tell I took this slide from one of our pitches because we have other people in the industry. We have Chadust in Kenya, we have Bright Green Energy, we have Ken Coco. But the thing that sets us aside from the rest is, one, the gig economy. When I was starting out Eco Makaa, I didn't have a lot of resources. I was a university student. And so you can imagine the limitation in terms of finances. And I believe most of you, in terms of even starting your own project, if you have faced the problem of being able to access finance. And so to start off, because I did not have enough finances, I decided to work with people who are already in the industry. So I was able to make a prototype of my briquette machine and work with people who are already making briquettes. Then what I'd basically do is try to standardize it along the entire range of people who are working with. So we would do modifications on their briquette machines in order to have briquettes of a certain diameter. And we'd be able to now standardize it in that manner, in addition to ensuring that the products that they were using were what we proposed and that no chemicals were used. And so the gig economy just shows that it's not only in Uber or Airbnb, it's also right in Kenya, whereby you can be able to use whatever resources that you have, work with other individuals within the industry in order to do what you want to do. In addition to that, we also worked with people who were owning pickups. So one of the main people who were supplying to one of the main industries was the hotel industry. We had clientele such as the Ole Sereni, Sankara, among others. And so to supply them with a large number of briquettes, what we do is that we work with people who have the pickups in order to transport it at a rate that's dependent on the number of kilometers that have been traveled. And this entire gig economy goes into the affordability. So we've been able to reduce our price by 30% as compared to our competitors. Secondly, the fact that we're sustainable, we use only waste. And thirdly, we incorporated an innovative aspect to our briquettes. So because briquettes are normally compacted, there's normally lack of oxygen within them. And so what normally happens is oxygen is required in order to start off a fire. And without the holes, without any oxygen, we will take a long period in order to ignite the briquettes. So we brought in the innovation of holes within the briquettes in order to enhance the availability of oxygen for faster ignition. Now, the business model is what I basically talked about, the gig economy. So we'll be able to bring together in-house trained community members to provide a steady and large supply of briquettes to the mass market. So the first people that we worked with is actually what you can see in the topmost picture. It was a lady called Kamau, and she had a briquette making site. And we worked with her in order to standardize her briquettes. And once they were standardized, we'd be able to package them, receive orders on our phones, whether it was by email or by phone call. And once we just received those purchasing orders, even from the hotels or direct orders from individuals, we'd be able to put the briquettes on top of the pickups and deliver. Now, the impact that Eco Makaa has had up until now is we've sold more than 15 tons of briquettes. We've been able to also create job opportunities for youth. So 21 job opportunities were created during the lifetime of Eco Makaa since 2013. We've been able to amass a clientele of 5-star hotels, and we've impacted more than 1,196 households. So I only put this slide with the graph here in order to show you the initial uptake of Eco Makaa. So you can see that there's a steady rise, although we had a drop in August, but there's a steady rise in terms of the uptake, just showing how much people really required the briquettes. And a story that I'd like to share with you is how we started off. So being that I didn't have the initial capital in order to make the prototype of our briquettes and be able to start and also include other people who are making briquettes in order to fulfill our demand, I decided to tutor. So I would tutor individuals within primary school, teach them maths and science, and I was able to put together some money in order to make the prototype that was required for our briquette making machine. And with the making of the briquettes, there was a quick uptick, just showing how much entrepreneurship in terms of the briquettes was required. Now that brings an end to my focus on Eco Makaa. I'd like to know how many people within the meeting have started their own entrepreneurial venture, if there is any at all. Please do share. Is there any individual who has started any entrepreneurial venture within their the periods of their lives? Okay, I can see. Yes, Lindsay says a farm. Okay, Lindsay, what were you farming?
We have cattle as well as veggies and have 3,000 square foot greenhouses. So we do farmers markets and sell online as well.
Wow. And I'd just like to add one follow-up question. What made you decide to actually start farming?
That's a good question. Well, it's a hobby in addition to just the thought of being able to provide good, healthy food to the community at an affordable price. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for that. And that's a great lead into what we'll be discussing next, the importance of entrepreneurship. So as Lindsay said, she's able to provide good products, good farming products to the community. And so while farming does that, entrepreneurship as a whole should also provide some solutions to various problems within the community. Taking it away from Eco Makaa and even Lindsay's farming, during the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw a huge growth in the number of businesses that sprouted in the United States. So actually, 4.4 million new businesses were created in 2020, the highest total on record. I don't know if you were like me when you had the statistics, because I expected that during the COVID-19 period, the number of businesses would dwindle, especially in terms of new businesses. But there was a growth in it. Why so? Because most people were trying to solve a problem, which was COVID-19. So you can see that some industries started producing the PPEs. Like in Kenya, we had people producing the masks. We have people producing all the equipment that are required, such as the gloves and even the overalls. We have businesses that really grew during this period. We have Amazon, we have the smaller Amazons, which basically try to sell their products online and, get them to your doorstep. We have the growth in businesses even on Instagram. So you'd find youth starting something, whether it was selling clothes or selling shoes or selling food stuff, and they'd post it on Instagram and Twitter. And once somebody is able to order there, they're able to deliver it. Now, in addition to the statistics that I said earlier, 24.3% is the increase from 2019 to 2019 to previous years in terms of the growth of the businesses. And I'd like to take us to the graphs on the left. So you can see that there's a growth in terms of the Pfizer, the Moderna, AstraZeneca, and Johnson & Johnson businesses, because they were producing the COVID-19 vaccinations. And while they were producing this COVID-19 vaccines within the US, we should know that lots of countries also did this, and they helped other countries. So we have cases such as India and China that, for example, were able to donate some of their drugs to Kenya. And so this just shows you that entrepreneurship is not an isolated case. While you're being an entrepreneur in one place, it's able to solve a problem miles away. And that's the first thing we should know about entrepreneurship in terms of its importance. It brings solutions to new problems. To the second importance, a growing population needs growing job opportunities. So I just took a few facts from various documents, and you realize that by 2100, a long way from here. Okay, it's not really long, but by 2100, there'll be an exponential growth in terms of the youth population in Africa. So we'll see a positive of 195%. While Asia drops, the number of youth in Asia is already large in itself. We also see a growth in North America, in Oceania, and the general number of youth. So this just proves to show that we need more opportunities for them. And by engaging in entrepreneurship, we can be able to create more businesses and create more opportunities. Actually, by 2030, there will be 375 million young people in the job market in Africa. And according to ILO, the global youth unemployment right now stands at 13.6%. So you can imagine how much more it will be if we do not create the job opportunities right now. And why I say that job opportunities are created by entrepreneurship is 2/3 of the small businesses that are there currently in the United States account for 44% of economic activity. So small businesses create 2/3 of the new jobs. Can you imagine? So we're not talking about the Facebooks and the Instagrams and the Googles and the Yahoos of the economy. We are talking about the small businesses within the economy that account for such a large portion of job opportunities. So the two takeaways we need to have in terms of the importance of entrepreneurship are: one, that entrepreneurship solves various problems, and two, it will create job opportunities for the youth of today and tomorrow. Now, I'd like to take us to the principles of entrepreneurship. So one is seeking to serve. I had already talked about Eco Makaa. So I'd like to take this time to talk about something that would resonate more with K-12 educators. And that is in 2011, immediately after I had finished my high school education, I decided to start a club called the Global Citizenship Club in Kenya. And so through this club, we were teaching youth in the Kibera slum of Nairobi two skills. One of the skills was French as a foreign language, and the second one was computer studies. And so being that I had a background in French from high school and I knew how to use a computer, I was able to rally people, one of them being the Moringa Institute, which is one large coding firm in Nairobi. And by working with them, we were able to go to this school. The school is called Toi Primary in Kibera. And we were able to use government-provided computers in order to teach these children skills. These children were, I believe, in grade 5 at that time. So one of the principles I realized is that we always need to serve. If we seek to serve, we'll always seek to find solutions to the problems within our community. We'll seek to provide job opportunities to the youth around us. Just going back to the importances. The second principle is that we need to use the resources that are available to us at whatever point in time. So in the top left picture, you can see that we were busy training children with the government-provided laptops and computers. We did it within their schools. And all we had to do as volunteers was come with the skills that we already had, which is basically computer and French. And by teaching them, we exposed them to the world of opportunities. So they knew how to use a computer after we taught them. The funny thing is that these computers, although they were provided by the government and they were present within the school, the children never used to use them because they didn't have a computer studies teacher. So by coming to actually teach them, you see that their desire for learning more increased. And when we exposed them to coding, basic coding, HTML, changing colors on a website, it awakened their desire of, well, creating impact, by moving and maybe writing 2 lines of code, I can be able to make impact by changing the color of something. And that's what I believe is very strong in some of the institutions here in the United States. Some of the institutions expose the children to various skills early on in life, and they are able to now use those resources that are available in order to create impact. I'd now like to take us to the ethos of entrepreneurship. The ethos of entrepreneurship to solve problems around us. And this is what I believe we need to teach the children of today. That by solving a problem through entrepreneurship, they will not only be improving their own living standard, but they will be improving the living standard of the entire community. Some people regard entrepreneurship as, a self-seeking journey. Well, I believe it is not. All entrepreneurship should be social entrepreneurship, whereby we seek to solve problems and we're able to generate revenue that basically still goes back into the economy, still creates jobs, still empowers people, still raises the living standards of the people that we care about within our community. This picture here is just me teaching the kids French. And one funny thing is that they no longer called me Teacher Cecil. They started calling me Teacher Bonjour. That's just on a light note. So entrepreneurship is not only in Kenya, it's not only in Africa, it's not only in the United States, it's everywhere, and it's with everyone. In the top left corner, during the COVID-19 pandemic, we had a child in Kenya who came up with the idea of a very rudimentary way of, washing your hands without actually having to touch the container that has the water. And when he had this idea, he told his father about it, and they were able to build that machine. Very rudimentary, but very important. The second picture that we have on the right is somebody who was, I believe, a speaker earlier today. And it's a picture of a young boy who decided to create electricity within his community by building a wind turbine. And so you can see that the principles that we were talking about earlier are being applied right here. We have one, these children are solving the problems around them. And two, they are using the resources that they have in order to solve these problems. The last picture I have on the bottom left, it might be a bit controversial, but I felt like it was important. Because one, Elon Musk is from South Africa, which is in Africa. And two, he's also created some positive change. So when he was younger, Elon Musk knew how to code. He was empowered with the coding skills. And by being able to gain the skill, he was able to make companies such as PayPal, which led to the sprouting of companies such as YouTube, and many others such as Tesla, and even his new company in terms of the space foray. And so you can see that we really need to empower children with various skills, even as K-12 educators or educators as general, in order for them to create the impact that we need to see in the community. I was having a class in the University of California, Berkeley, and we talked about giving an A to the people around us. So if we give an A to the children that we teach, if we actually show that we believe in them and we give them the skills they require, we are able to see a huge impact. Now, what should we do as K-12 educators or educators in whatever region of the world we're in? We need to create opportunities for pupils to learn and practice entrepreneurship. So I know that one of the things in the syllabus would be, community service, volunteering, but I feel like we need to incorporate entrepreneurship into it so that it incentivizes these kids and shows them, okay, you can be able to even better your life and better the life of your community members by solving a problem. I'd like to talk to you about 3 major organizations that had a role to play in my entrepreneurial journey. I'll start with the University of Nairobi. So the University of Nairobi, where I was studying my bachelor's degree, provided opportunities such as the Nairobi Innovation Week, whereby various individuals were able to come together and, to bring their innovations in front of everybody and pitch these various innovations. And on the top left corner, I was given the opportunity to pitch Eco Makaa to the dean of my school at that time and the Minister of Education. So that served as, a tap on the back. Imagine for somebody in his 3rd year of education, having just started the startup And, by being able to speak to this people that I deemed so important, I felt like I was making large steps to the future. And by being able to participate in activities such as the Nairobi Innovation Week, I was given a platform to talk and to show the impact that we were trying to create within Nairobi. The second organization that I'd like to talk to us about is the Anzisha Prize. So the Anzisha Prize is one of the prizes in Africa that awards very young entrepreneurs between the ages of 15 to 22. And so it brings together a cohort of 20 young entrepreneurs, and they go for a boot camp in South Africa, Johannesburg, for 2 weeks. They're able to learn about various things, ranging from the financial literacy to the structuring of a company to the hiring process. And they are also able to provide funding opportunities. And so through the Anzisha Prize, I was given a larger platform to talk about Eco Makaa, and I was also given a platform to grow it. The final organization I'd like to talk about is the MasterCard Foundation, and the fact that it has empowered various individuals who are trying to make an impact, especially through the skills that they learn while studying in the universities. So right here in the University of California, Berkeley, we have a cohort of 17 individuals who are studying different things. We have people studying development engineering, bioengineering, and many other forays. So you can see that when we are empowered with these skills, we're able to go back to Africa and create the impact that we talk about, that we desire to see. And so that just draws us back as K-12 educators to the fact that we need to create opportunities for pupils to learn and practice entrepreneurship. That's like one of the major things that we can do in order to empower them. We just need to expose them, give them that taste of it, and they can be able to grow thinking about how they can use whatever skills they have to create impact. So at this juncture, I'd like to bring the presentation to an end. Thank you very much. I'll now give it back to Martha.
All right, great, Cecil. And so thank you so much. At this point, if there are questions from the audience, and especially from educators on how this might be used in the classroom. I know there are, Agnes has some questions here, but we can get to those in a minute, but I just wanted to see if also from the educators in the audience, if there are other questions they want to add. But maybe we can go to Agnes's questions right away. So Agnes, why don't you just introduce yourself?
Yes. Well, you know what, very fascinating. You're great, I mean, really wonderful to hear from, a person who's really doing the actual work on the ground. That's really, really wonderful because, the Youth Summit has just been going on and everything, looking at, the fact that, globally, the majority of the people are the youth, and we're moving towards that. But I'm curious about, this is a great invention that you have, and a lot of people are using charcoal in African countries. So my question is, why don't more people adapt that, knowing that, cutting down trees, like Wangari Maathai, had tried to stop people from doing that. So why aren't more people doing that, given, what it is? And why haven't bigger companies taken that upon themselves also? Because, this looks to me like the goal of the future, to stop cutting down trees and move in that direction. And, secondly, related to that, why are 5-star hotels using that methodology? I'm not clear why they're actually adopting that instead of just local companies. And, I mean, don't they have gen sets, for instance?
So to your first question,
And are you going to go back and continue with that, because it's really very important for the country?
Okay, thank you very much, Agnes, for your questions. First of all, in terms of the adoption of the briquettes within the economy, the first problem that we face is the problem of culture. So people are very much accustomed to using wood fuel in comparison to briquettes. And so to be able to break into this industry, it requires a lot of funding, it requires a lot of marketing, a lot of giving of free samples to the larger community in order to get them to adapt. As Eco Makaa, we tried to go to the Kawangware slum and give these briquettes to, they normally have roadside vendors, people who just cook various meals. And we felt like by reaching out to them, we could have them as the early adopters, and they would be able to convince the various individuals living around them, because they were a trustworthy avenue for getting to the other households. But we realized that the problem is most of them do not just believe that briquettes work. Maybe this might be contributed to some of the challenges that we face with the briquettes, which would be the ignition time. And a normal briquette would take a bit longer, approximately 5 minutes longer to ignite as compared to normal charcoal. And so we tried to innovate around this by including holes, but this would still require much more innovation. The second thing is the briquettes, being that they are made out of a mixture of the carbon and the clay and water, it has a large ash content as compared to normal charcoal. And so what happens in Kenya is that they'd have something we call a jiko, where they put the charcoal, and the charcoal burns out. And for normal charcoal, what they do is they'll just shake this jiko, remove the ash, and add more of the charcoal on top, and it will keep on lighting. But because the briquettes have a large ash content, it's very hard to just shake and add. You'd have to actually start the entire process of ignition again. So these are some of the challenges that I'm seeking to address as we continue with Eco Makaa. And yes, Agnes, I believe that I will continue with Eco Makaa once I get back to Kenya.
Good, great.
Thank you.
And how about the 5-star hotels?
Oh, yes. So the 5-star hotels, what happens is when people go to the 5-star hotels, they want like a braai of sorts. They want like chicken cooked in the open on top of charcoal. And so the hotels would use tandoories, very large, I don't know the word in English, but in Kiswahili we call it a jiko. So very large machinery that has the briquettes inside, and the briquettes are lit up, and you just put the chicken on top and it cooks and they're able to eat.
Thank you.
So Abdul, do you want to ask your question directly?
I'm happy to do so, Cecil. Thanks a lot. I know you've stressed some of the disadvantages of the briquette, but when you look at the environmental, you look at the health cost of using charcoal, the disadvantages of briquettes are far much better than, it's better to use the maize briquettes as compared to using charcoal. So the key thing I want to ask you is, are you thinking business-wise beyond Kenya? Because from an entrepreneurial point of view, shouldn't we be encouraging our entrepreneurs and business people to think regionally as opposed to nationally? So a bigger market would be the East African market. In West Africa, for example, a lot of businessmen these days are thinking about ECOWAS, and we have free movement of people and the free businesses. So are you thinking much broader beyond Kenya to other parts of the East African community, or maybe even Southern Africa, in terms of trying to market these products? So maybe some of the challenges you may be facing with the market in Kenya could be addressed, could probably be dealt with in other parts of the continent.
Thank you very much for for your question, Abdul. The main thing that we were able to learn from Kenya is the fact that, as I've said, there are various challenges with the briquettes. And so I believe that even before we're able to expand to other African countries, for example, South Africa or Nigeria, or even closer home, Uganda, we might need to actually solve the problems that we have been able to face. Because if we still expand to Uganda, we'll still get feedback on the low ash content and the long ignition time that it takes for the briquettes. And what I realized is that the normal Kenyan citizen wants something that works exactly like what they know. So when you bring briquettes and they just see one disadvantage, or in our case, two disadvantages, they are very quick to back out from using it, because they'll ask you, why should I use it? And we have charcoal. Charcoal lights faster. I have no time. And you actually find that, let's say, for example, the people who sell by the roadside, the vendors, they're normally cooking very fast. So they have no time to stop and ignite again. So I believe that before we expand as a company, we might really have to look into solving these challenges. But yes, we're definitely looking into expansion into other African countries.
So are there other questions? Do we have, I'm curious, I see Kellyanne and Dumas also in the audience, and if this is something that you could see how to bring into the classroom, and if so, how might you do that? Alex also has a question. Alex, why don't you go ahead? Just ask.
Sure. So actually, one of a former student at BU has just started the ethics bowl at Boston University, which is sort of a philosophy-minded ethics club, sort of like debate team. And they ask questions like this, both of individuals and of businesses. So I'm curious, working off of the local, regional, and sort of global scaling question that Abdul was just asking, could you talk about how entrepreneurs like yourself address issues of business ethics while scaling production, such as balancing fair wages and the potential increase of production costs?
Okay, thank you very much, Alex, for that question. While starting Eco Makaa, we started with the basic behaviors within the industry. So, for example, somebody who was making briquettes would pay the workers per day. So we'd pay them 500 Kenya shillings, which converts into $5 for 8 hours of work. So that actually is pretty small when you compare it to when you're trying to translate it back into USD. But in Kenya, it's a lot of money. And so we started off with those basic principles. But as we started growing, we realized that, okay, we have enough, say, because we know we have this number of clients, we're supposed to produce this number of briquettes per month. And so now we can be able to pay you per month. And so that's when we started the institution of actually paying these workers per month. And so they no longer have to work per day and get the 500 Kenya shillings per day. And so I believe that's one aspect in which we have tried to grow as a company in terms of ethics and ensuring that people are able to receive, very comfortable and very, trustworthy payment and reliability, because somebody can be able to plan their lives with monthly payment as compared to a day's work. And going to production costs. So we really try to keep Eco Makaa briquettes sustainable and clean. So we only use the carbonized agricultural waste and the clay and the water. But you realize that some of the institutions, in order to, enhance probably the ignition rate of the briquettes, they would include chemicals into it. And so by including various chemicals, these chemicals are able to make the briquette burn faster, and they're able to sell it to the community members. And okay, this increases the production costs a bit, but it also, brings about other problems in terms of the respiratory system. So in terms of Eco Makaa, with our production costs, we've tried to keep it to a minimum, with the business principle of making sure that we make at least a 30% profit on whatever we are doing, so that we can be able to pay our workers, we can be able to pay for various bills such as electricity, transportation, and have some profit in the bank in miscellaneous cases. And so I think that as you grow in entrepreneurship, what should be explored is mainly solving a problem and being able to get enough profit to sort out the bills and to keep the company afloat, and not just focus on, enriching oneself. So I think that this is something that's very important as we keep growing, from a local to a regional and even to a global company. I hope I've been able to answer your questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
And maybe additionally to that, like for fair wages, we pay the women and the men the same while they work in Eco Makaa. So there's no segregation because of gender. And also in Kenya, while in America people face, racism, we face tribalism. So we have 46 different tribes in Kenya, and we have people drawn at, separated along tribal lines. And you'd find a company only employs maybe one certain group of, people from a certain tribe. So as a company, what we do is we employ openly. We employ anybody from whatever tribe you're from, and we are able to also, employ whatever gender you are.
Wow, that's fantastic. Thank you.
Cecil, I have a question actually. So you're using the cobs from the maize, Agnes actually mentioned that she's growing maize, and I guess Agnes, is your farm? Is it in Zambia or is it in Florida?
It's in Lusaka.
Oh, Lusaka. Okay, right. That's why I suspected that. Yeah. Yes. So of course, there's maize all over the continent, even though it's not indigenous to the continent. So there's probably a huge supply of maize cobs. So I'm just curious, is that sort of an endless supply of maize cobs, or might you run out of it at some point? And can other agricultural waste be used, or does that affect the way that you carbonize it and all that? So yeah, supply and then the carbonization of it.
Okay, so in terms of supply, there's a large supply of maize cobs, depending on where you are from. So like, for example, we're able to get our maize cobs from Kiambu, because Nairobi doesn't have much of the maize cobs, because it doesn't have much of the farms. And so with the maize cobs that are present, whether in Kenya or whatever region you are in Africa, you can be able to use them. Maize cobs are not the only product that can be used for briquettes, funnily enough. And maize cobs are not even the best product to use for the briquettes, because of the calorific value. You'll find that other materials such as sugarcane bagasse have a higher calorific value when carbonized as compared to maize cobs. We only use maize cobs for Eco Makaa because it was the one that was most readily available in the region we were in. And the sugarcane bagasse is found in the western part of Kenya. So if we wanted to use sugarcane bagasse, we'd actually have to maybe move our headquarters or incur costs of transportation. So what we decided to do is to start with the maize cobs And as we grow, we can be able to now incorporate a range of other products within Kenya. So, for example, in the western part, we have the sugarcane bagasse. And the sugarcane bagasse comes from various industries, the sugar millers, that would like squeeze out the sugar from the sugarcane and leave the bagasse as waste products. So that's something else that should be explored by entrepreneurs, the use of this sugarcane bagasse. And we have some of the companies actually exploring that in Kenya. Then on the eastern side, close to the coast, we have the coconuts. So coconuts, when they're carbonized, can actually be used as another alternative to make briquettes. And we have one of the companies that we pointed out as our competitor, which is Ken Coco. And so they use the coconuts, they are able to carbonize them, grind them down, and compact them into these briquettes. So I believe those are just two of the main examples, but we also have macadamia nuts, and whatever other range of, hard substance agricultural waste that can be carbonized, that can actually be used as an alternative. I believe those are the main agricultural wastes that are in Kenya currently.
Yeah, so it sounds like you've done your homework there. So that's, I think it's super interesting. I know there's all kinds of biochar and other kinds of things this is specifically to make fuel, but other people are using biochar, agricultural waste, for fertility in the soil. So there's different kinds of things that can be done there. Abdul has another question. Abdul, do you want to go ahead?
Martha, I'm trying to address the issue of teaching entrepreneurship, the thing that you've been pushing. So just asking Cecil, what's the state of things in Kenya, whether kids are being taught about entrepreneurship at an early stage, and whether there are any lessons or any thoughts you have on how one can teach a child how to become an entrepreneur from a very early stage.
Okay, let's look at Kenya. So Kenya, before, ever since independence, we were using a certain system of education. We were using the 8-4-4 education system, whereby we'd have 8 years in primary school, then 4 years in undergraduate, 4 years in high school, then 4 years in undergraduate. So we had exams only at the end of this period. So you'd have one main exam at the end of 8 years. You have one main exam at the end of the 4 years in high school, and one main one after the end of the 4 years in undergrad. And recently, we started changing it. We started using I believe it's called the CDC approach, whereby we now have tests all through the entire journey of education. In addition to this, we've started now allowing children to focus on different aspects of education. So children are now able to learn various skill sets. If they're not so good in, studying and, doing the exams and using that knowledge, now they're able to go ahead and use whatever skills that they naturally have, whether it's handwork, whether it's painting, drawing, whether it's singing. And we now try to create a path whereby they can be able to flourish in that. And so just relating that to entrepreneurship, I feel that allows a child to explore their skills. And once they are empowered with this knowledge, they can be able to go ahead and start various entrepreneurial ventures. And in terms of the lessons I can share for entrepreneurship to children, with children, they're very impressible. Like when you speak to them, they're able to learn from what you show them, what you do. Like I used to have a primary school teacher who used to say, monkey see, monkey do. So when we have children in our midst and they're exposed to entrepreneurship very early, and they see it as the common way of doing things, they start seeing it as an opportunity. They no longer only talk about, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a teacher or I want to be a lawyer, they're also able to talk about and to be an entrepreneur. So whenever they're studying and whatever they're studying, they might now want to channel it more to business. When we look at business, business is like an afterthought in Africa. And I think I'd even say generally, globally, people first want to, create a good career, go to school, get a well-paying job. And then down the line, at some point when you're about to retire, you need some money. You'll start your business to keep you going and keep you busy. But I think we need to introduce it earlier on. And from the cases that I was able to show, such as Elon Musk, and these are people in the United States, we have people that are controversial, but okay, we can see that exposing them to entrepreneurship early is good. So we have Elon Musk, we have Mark Zuckerberg, we have, I think it's Jeff Bezos. All these individuals, and even Steve Jobs, all these individuals, funnily enough, were exposed to coding at an early age. And once they were exposed to coding, they started playing around with it and they started making businesses out of it. So I think that these are just learning opportunities that we need to take. That by teaching a child early on about entrepreneurship and giving them the skills and opportunities to practice it, they can now be able to start implementing them. And they have a much longer time frame to do it as compared to somebody who is maybe my age. You have a much shorter time and you have many more responsibilities.
Well, Cecil, I actually know that the Anzishi Prize folks who are based out of South Africa, that they're trying to implement. And I don't know if as a prize winner, you've been exposed to some of the material that they have to try to teach at the elementary school level or maybe not even, well, maybe it is. Yeah, they do have some for younger kids, but then also for secondary school. But one of the things, I was in a conversation with them recently, was targeting the parents, because parents are very risk averse. They do not want their children doing something which they think they might fail at. And entrepreneurship is, we always hear fail forward fast, fail, 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 fail. And then, I was just listening to something on venture capitalists this morning, which is a whole nother topic perhaps, but it's a big one in terms of entrepreneurship. And, most venture capitalists, the investments don't make money. They're just waiting for that 10% one that of the things that they're investing in that will come back big. Everything else might fail, but one thing will come back big and everybody will get their money back. But for parents, it's super risky if you're educating a child and you're telling that child to become an entrepreneur. So I'm curious about your parents, but also if you do see that, the whole issue of risk averse, and if somebody doesn't have something to fall back on, and the family is depending on, everybody in that family doing enough to survive, how risky is it to become an entrepreneur in the environment in Kenya, for instance?
I feel like my parents were very supportive of my entrepreneurship experiences, being that they also, like my mother, she gave me some part of my starting capital, and she, gave me the go-ahead to keep studying and keep working. One thing is, yes, she was very risk averse. So in terms of maybe prioritizing business to school or, having too much to do with Eco Makaa, she'd tend to tell me, no, try to concentrate on your studies. Studies come first. And I understand that, yes, studies are very important. So I believe it's like a game of balancing off, whereby you have education to build your skills and you're able to use these skills that you have from education in order to practice various entrepreneurship ventures, for example. And just bringing it back to being risk averse, I feel like in Africa, most people start businesses because one, they might not be having a job at that time, so they are maybe pushed into it. So let's say somebody starts selling, boiled eggs by the roadside. So, okay, they don't have anything else to do. They're just trying to find something to live on. And so that's why entrepreneurship ends up looking like, the last priority for somebody. First become a doctor, first become a teacher, then look at entrepreneurship. But I feel like if we bring the two together, whereby we have entrepreneurship that is drawn from the skills we learn in school, we're able to do much better. And then for Anzisha, yes, they have the book for parents, and this just teaches parents how to be more welcoming of the idea that my child might want to be an entrepreneur. It doesn't mean that the child should stop going to school, but it just means that encouraging the child to keep on with entrepreneurship as they go to school. And I believe they also have a certain curriculum, and I'd be very much willing to even speak with them to, be able to share with K-12 educators on some of the learning experiences that they may be having.
And actually what I would mention too, and I know that they're developing, they feel like role models like yourself. When people hear your story, they're like, oh, you're closer. I mean, Elon Musk is great, but he's so he's in a rocket, he's so far away from everybody. And they're like, well, how can I possibly be like him? He sneezes and he has tons of money. So people want to know somebody like you who they can see. You're just a step ahead of them. So on Zishi, what they're doing is creating lots of stories that can be shared and not necessarily, all super successful, but like you were saying, solving problems. And so how does somebody solve a problem? And, maybe tomorrow they will go off and work for a company, but they, in the meantime, it's an entrepreneurial behavior to solve a problem, to come up with something and move forward with it. So, it is, they're, I guess they're evangelists around this idea. And there's others around the continent that do that. And Alex is saying, the side hustle, keeping that going, but actually, making it something that's
right. And I think that's why I'm asking you the question whether you would go back, because the problem that is seen in many cases is that somebody starts something and they lose it because they've seen some, like you're saying yourself, they've picked it up. I mean, to me, that sounds like a very exciting thing. And, Abdu asked if it could actually be brought bigger, to West Africa, to other places. It's a big sounding thing and you're at the beginning of it. But the problem is that people drop those things before they can grow. And because they think, well, this is too much. Like you said, there's too much ash here. I mean, we're not going to deal with this. We identify these two problems. And so I think there's also the need to work with other companies who may be able to take it up, because you can't do it by yourselves, but like Martha asked, there's cobs everywhere. Maize cobs are everywhere. I mean, in Zambia, we have cobs everywhere. If somebody can just pick them up for free and develop that into something that is lucrative, why not? But I think the idea here is to work with others who can make that reality in terms of reducing the ash and reducing the igniting moment that you talked about.
Yeah, I think that's very important. I feel like, when people find challenges with entrepreneurship and you find like a greener, some greener pasture, it's very easy to, fall back and relax. So I think that's an important point you brought, Agnes.
Yeah.
And we only have about a minute left, but just one other thought that I had too, and just in terms of like what this could do in the American classroom. I mean, even the problem you started with, I think kids here, they're used to turning on maybe an electric stove or a gas stove, and they barbecue outside in the summer or something like that. But to think about, if you had to, use charcoal, get wood every single day, and I know we have lessons on food around the world, but I think maybe doing a lesson on how people cook around the world and the implications for that might be something interesting in the classroom to develop as lessons for kids to think about, how things are done differently and what kinds of especially with deforestation, climate change, the respiratory problems, and then the whole issue of collecting wood. Who's
Exactly.
doing that? And that's often the young women or young kids or whoever. And there's so many issues that come up
But
with
diminishing forests too. Diminishing forests is a very big one. That should actually get the governments involved in saying, hey, we need a solution to this. We need to just go all out and help everybody, not just, the people in the rural areas, but everybody in terms of, finding a solution to that.
Yeah. And I know that in Somalia, there's been a big problem of the wood going over to the Gulf, crossing the Red Sea. So the charcoal industry is, it takes it out even. So it's not even for local use. Sometimes it becomes exported. So yeah, some really difficult issues around charcoal. So we are at the time now at 2:50 in California. And so Cecil, thank you so much for this. And
thank you, Cecil.
Abdul has.
I feel like you should speak to more youth and more people in terms of doing things, starting locally from where they are. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And you need to be speaking to Kamkwamba about what you guys should be doing.
I definitely will.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And we will see whoever ends up in the next session for Jerusalem.
The next session is at 6 o'clock. I think it's open to everybody, and I invite everybody to come. It's really the one on Jerusalem, integrating music and the global event. I think that's what it is.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you again, Cecil, and everyone.
You.
Okay. Have a great afternoon.
You too, Martha.